Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm at Gunnersbury Cemetery in West London. Just to give you a little bit of orientation, there's Chiswick roundabout up there. We have this dual carriageway, so it's quite noisy here. And in today I'm going to talk to you about the Katyn Memorial. I'm not going to talk about the massacre of Katyn, but or the massacres, because it's often called the Katyn Massacre, but it was several massacres. I'm going to talk about the fight for the memorial here. And so this is something which is highly political. And it often happens, I see this in the comment section all the time, that people try to bend history to suit their politics. I don't know why they're doing it the other way around. They bend their politics to suit history. In my opinion, would be a much better way of doing it. So just before the Second World War, there was the Ribbentrop-Molotov Pact, which led to the start of the Second World War. Nazi Germany invaded Poland on the 1st of September, and the Soviet Union invaded on the 17th of September 1939. The Soviet Union took hundreds of thousands of Polish prisoners, and it segregated those prisoners, as every country did, and those officers went one way and others went in another direction. The difference being, of course, that the Soviet Union went on to murder a large number of those officers and other people it rounded up and decided that for whatever reason it didn't like. So these people were murdered in the spring of 1940, and until 1990 the Soviet Union denied that it had done this. And even today in Russia there are still those who would deny it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about the idea of the monument in this cemetery and why it is actually here and not in another location. As you can see, I mean, here lots of graves. It's very quiet inside. Sorry, it's quiet cemetery, not many people around, but there's plenty of noise on the outside. So if we go back to October 1971, there was an association was founded which was called the Katyn Memorial Fund, and at the head was Lord Barnby, who used to sit in the House of Lords. There was Airy Neave, who you might remember. He escaped from Colditz. He was murdered by the IRA in 1979. Toby Jessel. There was also the writer Louis Fitzgibbon, and Louis Fitzgibbon had published a book on the Katyn Massacre in 1971. Later actually published a book on what he called, I think it was called The Betrayal of the Somalis, if I remember right, in 1982. And a idea of putting together a monument was also the head of it was Count Stefan Zamoyski. Other people who were on the committee included Colonel Tufton Beamish, General Roy Butcher, Lord Monckton of Branchley, the Count or the Marquis of Salisbury, the Count Arran, Sir George Sinclair, and Winston Churchill. No, that's not the Prime Minister, it's the grandson of the Prime Minister. He was quite big in politics in the 70s and 80s. You often used to see him, interviews with him on the television. And the problem was, of course, they had nowhere to put this memorial. And so they were looking around. But this cemetery here would be quite suitable, because there are a lot of Poles who are buried here. For example, you've got 24th Polish Lancers and their families. Jadwiga was still alive when this went up, as was Mieczysław, who was here, at Marian Jashinsky, Edward Bachu. I don't know if Edward's Polish, but I'm just guessing. Josefa Juszczak, and okay, these people were all still alive at the time, but there are lots of Poles in this part of the cemetery. So now there were many people interested. Many Poles were around. Actually, one of the people buried here is Tadeusz Komorowski, Bo Komorowski, who led the insurgents during the Warsaw uprising in 1944. So hundreds of thousands of Poles who'd escaped from the communists, well, Nazis and the communists, in various countries. And so they were obviously quite keen on a memorial as well. But one person that certainly wasn't keen was Władimir Simonov, who wrote a letter to the authorities in Kensington, Chelsea, and he said he doesn't want a monument like this to be put up. And the Soviets said, they even sent a letter from the deputy foreign minister, who was Shimon Pavlovich Kozyriev, and a number of diplomatic attempts were also made to British authorities. Around 1973, the political bureau of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union also made attempts to stop this, and this went to the very top. These people, this was Brezhnev, Kosygin, Gomulka, Suslov, and later Soviet dictator Yuri Andropov. So they were very keen that nothing would happen. But just as we see the sort of thing that Russia does today, it took some more physical action. The wife of Louis Fitzgibbon, the author of the 1971 work on Katyn, was beaten up when she went on holiday to France. Was this a coincidence? Probably not. Yet another person, whose name I can no longer remember, was poisoned, and this was a Polish-German business person, and the poison wasn't actually identified. If I can remember the name of the person, I'll put it down in the below the comments. On the 1st of July 1976, in this cemetery, the foundation stone, the cornerstone, was laid for the construction of a memorial. And on the 18th of September 1976, it was unveiled, and there was 8,000 people present there, but the British government refused to send anyone. The person who unveiled the monument was one Maria Chełmecka, and her husband Tadeusz, he had been in charge of a border control station in the east, and he'd been murdered at Tver, which is near Moscow. And the ceremony was done by the Władysław Rubin, who, as Roman Catholic, but all major religions in Poland were representative. So you had Mateusz Szymański, who was a bishop of the Orthodox Church. We have the Polish Protestant Church, Evangelical Augsburg Church, Bishop Władysław Fiel, and there was Dr. Frysner, who was the head of the Jewish Veterans Association. Others who spoke included Lord Barnby, Lord Oswald, and the President of Poland in London. So the President of the London government, Stanisław Ostrowski, and Winston Churchill, the grandson, remember, he also laid a wreath. And they played the national anthems of the United Kingdom and Poland, and there were representatives of various countries. Even the British government wasn't here. There were representatives of Brazil, Liberia, Uruguay, Colombia, Bolivia, and the United States. Now, the British government, of course, found itself in these circumstances in very difficult situation. There was a debate in the House of Commons in September 1976, and it was the Conservative opposition which was obviously attacking the Labour government, which itself had a very small majority at the time. And the one Air Force Marshal, Sir John Slessor, he said that the British government had shown remarkable bad manners and cowardly ungratefulness. Nonetheless, there was one person who actually bothered to turn up here. He turned up in British military uniform. Now, he'd obviously been forbidden to do so, and you can't just do this, turn up in an army uniform for something if you want. You know, I remember when I was in the army, somebody wanted to get married in his army uniform, and so he had to get official permission to do that. He said as long as he's well turned out, that's great. And anyway, so what's happened since then is that we have there's an annual ceremony held here, as there is for many other things, and the since 1979, when the 4th of May 1979, there was the victory of the Margaret Thatcher, and that in turn led to a change in the position of the British government, and so therefore the British government allowed its representatives in one way or another to actually come here and to do to take part in the ceremony. So what I'll do now is, having told you all about it, I shall take you here to see it. Now, as you will see, it has a date on it, and that date is 1940. Now, I do remember at the reading an article, I can't remember if it's in Louis Fitzgibbon's book or it's in Death in the Forest, but it quoted a local I can't remember, it was a bishop, sorry, it was a church person, I can't even remember which church it was, but he said that putting the date on a memorial is like putting the murderer's name on a grave. Although, you know, it is quite common to actually do it. Now, it has to be borne in mind the Soviet Union didn't admit this until 1990. But this put up in 1976, this is the first. Now, there are many Katyn memorials now in various countries, and there were even Katyn memorials in Russia. They were put up in Tver in 1992 and 1993. So that's one of the places where people were murdered. And those memorials were removed in 2020 as part of the now denial of history by the current government of Russia, and which tries to bend things to suit its own. Okay. So, sumienie świata woła o świadectwo prawdzie. So it says that responsibility of the world is a desire to testify to the truth in remembrance of 14,500 Polish prisoners of war who disappeared in 1940 from camps at Kozielsk, Starobielsk and Ostashkov, of whom 4,500 were later identified in mass graves at Katyn near Smolensk. So you've got these camps. In fact, it's now known that there were more. And so this casket contains soil from their graves murdered by the Soviet secret police on Stalin's orders in 1940. The soil there hereunder came from their graveyard 1990, as finally admitted in April 1990 by the Soviet Union after 50 years shameful denial of the truth. And it does need to be pointed out very, very, very clearly that who was responsible for the Second World War. It's the two countries. Okay, it was Nazi Germany that invaded Poland, thus starting the war, but it would never have done this or been able to have done so much without the assistance of the Soviet Union. Without the Soviet Union, the Holocaust would not have happened. Without this, the two together, coming together. Of course, Katyn also needs to be pointed out very clearly that without the Nazi invasion, that also wouldn't, without that, Katyn wouldn't have happened. So the two things are absolutely interlinked. And I know that today, when you see these people trying to whitewash Nazi crimes, and regrettably there's plenty of them in Poland as well, it is for their own political ideologies. It's really sad. Anyway, how can we explain how the British government behaved? Well, it was from a diplomatic point of view. I can understand it. I think by the time Margaret Thatcher came to power, also, Ronald Reagan won the election several months later, so from 1980. Then it was a different. It would work out somewhat differently. Anyway, I've said a lot of that from my own memory of things. Now, obviously I was around in 1976, but I wasn't actually following it so closely at the time. But I did get the book Death in the Forest. I ordered it from the library, and they got it for me, and I read it. I don't think there was ever any question whatsoever of who was responsible for the Katyn murders. I mean, one of the really ironic things is that in when the bodies were discovered at the beginning of April 1940, and then they flew some people to actually see it, and some American prisoners of war, for example, and they passed over Warsaw where the ghetto was burning. So to try and to make sure that the Americans knew about this Soviet crime, they actually saw this major Nazi crime at the same time. This is the best known of the Soviet crimes, but there were so many of them. Hundreds of thousands of people were died as a result of Soviet imperialism. And there's always people sort of say, Soviets or Nazis aren't as bad as the communists or something like that, as if there were any difference. You have to see the crimes of both as being, you have to see them as one. It is the communists and the Nazis who together did this. Anyway, thanks very much for watching. Hope you found it interesting. I sort of changed my mind when I came here. I thought I was on the train, and I thought that I'd go to Gunnersbury. I just thought, well, I'll go to Gunnersbury. I've never been there, never seen this monument. And when I came here, I thought I'll talk about the Katyn Massacre. And then when I got here, I thought, no, I'm not going to talk about the Katyn Massacre. I'm going to talk about the monument itself. And now, in this cemetery, we have, as I said, Bo Komorowski, his grave. And now I'm going to see if I can find it myself. But it's really interesting. But people all over. Okay, this part's Polish because I was sort of talking about Poland. You might think it's all Polish, but it isn't. There's people from Sri Lanka. There are Muslim graves here. There's many British graves here. There's we can see people from. There's people from Africa. There's all over the place. There's Eastern Orthodox. There's Ukrainian graves here as well. So it's all it's very, very, very curious actually to do this. And see, these are Polish. And so I'll show you this one here. So Wacław Jankowski Rotmistrz Wojsk Polskich. Rotmistrz, that is in English Ritter, was it Rittmeister or Rittermeister? I can't remember in English. Rittmeister, it's a cavalry officer, and so it's like a captain. And so we often see that. I've noticed on a couple of other graves as well. The Rittmeister, it is German, or maybe not German army, but certain Prussian or Saxon armies, and some Scandinavian armies as well. They had it. So there you go. Okay, so from me in Gunnersbury, thanks very much for watching. I upload every day now, 100 hours. And on Tuesdays and Fridays, always, I do a longer video like this one. So hope you found it interesting. All the best. Bye for now.